You're listening to Humans in Tech. Our podcast explores today's most transformative technology and the trends of tomorrow, bringing together the brightest minds in and outside of our industry. We unpack what's new in physical access, identity verification, cybersecurity, and IoT ecosystems. We reach beyond the physical world, discuss our digital transformation as a species, and dive into the emerging phygital experience. Join us on our journey as we discover just how connected the future will be and how we will fit into that picture. Your host is Lee Dow, VP of Global Marketing at Identiv.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm joined by Odess, GM of New Markets at Latch, one of the 2020 IFSEC Global Influencers in Security, and labeled an Uber networker by the Washington Post. So glad to connect with you today, Lee.
You too. It's been a while, but It's always great to catch up.
For sure. Today we're talking about Web3 and the Metaverse. It's a topic that I know both you and I are super interested in. The internet has really evolved in three phases over time. You know, we had Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, where Web 1 was really all about the information economy, a lot of just desktop reading of information. And Web 2 really gave rise to the platform economy. So you've got social media, cloud computing, smartphones, and that really kickstarted the whole creator economy. So platforms like Facebook, Google, and Spotify became really massive and, made people and their data the product. And I think what I find, and I'm sure you do too, about Web3 is that we're really moving into the token economy. So it's driven by AI and blockchain, and the internet is becoming more and more owned by the users and builders and orchestrated by tokens like FIDO and NFTs. So obviously we're in the token business. Tokens give creators property rights. They give them the ability to own a piece of the internet. So in your opinion, Lee, how likely is it that decentralized infrastructure and application platforms will put centralized tech giants out of place? And will users, really be able to fairly own their own information?
It's a really good question. And my thoughts around that are a couple of things. First of all, I think the large companies themselves are going to be able to continue to morph and grow. So I'm not sure if it'll put them out of place more than force them to reimagine their businesses. And I think Facebook's a good example of them moving to Meta and looking at the Metaverse and what they're doing there. So that's sort of, in a lot of places, people call that a pivot in a way. So I think we'll continue to do that. I do think it'll introduce some new people as well into the center of power, if you would, of that may not exist now. And what's interesting to me is so a lot of times we like to talk about sort of like the direct hits to things like that. I'm actually interested in a lot of the indirect. So a good, for instance, would be, Mr. Beast all of a sudden becomes one of the largest hamburger restaurants in the world and literally doesn't own a restaurant, right? So he's taking on other places like Uber Eats and, McDonald's and whatnot. And it came from nowhere. Or a friend of mine recently ordered coffee, and instead of going to the grocery store or just going online and buying it, he bought into with an NFT. And as part of that, the exchanges around how commerce is done and products are discovered and brought. That to me is pretty fascinating on that side. And that does shift the power structures in some ways, not overnight. I think it'll take some more time. And we'll probably have, a handful of two truths, if you would, the old and the new, just like we're seeing in our business currently now. But what's exciting about it is all the things that it's going to sort of unlock and the creativity and the people getting involved. I only believe, I like to believe maybe opportunistically and positively. It just gets me excited to think about all the positive impacts that's going to bring and new ideas.
I was laughing a little bit right before we hopped on here together because I saw the tweet that you responded to from Blake Miller, who said, most new IoT companies think it's enough to just connect to all the things. And if you've been doing this for a while, you realize the things don't matter at all. It's the experiences and the software that creates because of the connection. So I liked your response where you're like, I don't know what's worse, this or the thing companies who think all they need is an app to control the thing.
Yeah, pretty much. It just shows the lack of imagination in some areas where it's, they still haven't moved out of the world of, hey, we're going to do, they look at apps or they look at the technology and the software as we're just going to mimic what the people were doing before and just put an app on it. And it doesn't create any value. And in a lot of cases, a lot of the products that are still in the marketplace, when they put some technology on top of it, they haven't really created a great experience outside of the ability to, put a key in the lock is almost easier and still than using the mobile device for a lot of the companies that are in that space. There's others that are doing a good job in thinking about, it's really a flip too on that end. In my opinion, it's a lot of these locks that are in the marketplace, for instance, I'm picking on them, but it could be light switches too. They were built to be mechanical, and then they the old Portlandia joke, they put a bird on it. They put some tech on it, and they didn't build it actually with technology in mind, and then have the hardware support software. They have software that supports hardware, and it's just fundamentally broken.
Yeah, definitely. I have written quite a bit, and I'm starting to speak quite a bit about the metaverse and about this new phygital world, and how the metaverse and AR are really revolutionizing the concept of how we communicate, how we live, how we work, how we play. And for me, when I look at it, I view it almost like the evolution of the social experiment of social media. But this one's really merging our physical and digital identities and creating that phygital world that allows us to not only create, but recreate ourselves as many times as we choose, because our digital personas are not really limited by our physical bodies or siloed by social constructs, right? I mean, I can, be a, woman in security, but I can also, maybe have a shop in the metaverse, right? That's completely different and separate from, what my day job is. And so I find that really interesting. And how do we, verify and connect people's physical identity with all of their virtual identities?
Yeah. I mean, so a couple of things. Number one, this is what I love about the phygital world, the word itself, it's creative. And it actually, if you think about it, it's hard to not smile when you say that word. So
I know it is.
Kudos whoever came up with that. That's good marketing. And I really like that. And I hope it sticks and people run with it. When it comes to the ability to actually, it's funny. My true thoughts on it are, in some cases, this allows you to be your authentic self.
I agree completely. I've said that to you.
Yeah. So it's like you talked about it. It allows creativity and exploration and curiosity. And for me, that's what it sort of opened up. And it's almost, I joke, and I don't know if it's Minesweeper or Zelda or whatever it is. It reminds me of when you would go into one of those dark rooms, and as you touched the box, it opened up light and you found things underneath it. To me, this is that same sort of, I got to believe in some cases, exploration of how it used to be when people would go from, the one area of land that they had, and they would, find new land somewhere else by going across the ocean. In a lot of cases, to me, it feels like this. So I'm excited about that. The ability to be your authentic self is, I mean, in some cases, I also, you don't have to do it necessarily anonymously. It's just, you get to go explore and have different personas. It's like, the people that work by day and club at night, and they can be who they are and test and do stuff. So yeah, the identity side to me is, I'm a big believer in sort of attribute-based identity in some cases where, you instead of our world where it's been given identity to us, first it was our business cards, then it was our driver's license and passports, where those are sort of given to us and not really necessarily your true identity of who you are. It's like, it's an address and a social security number and a picture that's on there, but it doesn't say much about you. This gives you even a deeper opportunity to express who you are. And maybe it's not used maybe to get into a building, I don't know, but maybe it'll give you access to other things based off of, online, or when we get into the metaverse and some other places that, the currency of who your identity is very different, and they'll be able to utilize it in a way that maybe we're not even thinking about. That's the other thing that's interesting to me.
Oh, I love that your identity is your currency in the metaverse.
Yeah, correct. But you have this propensity to we all want to be identity is the same thing as the card, which was the same thing as this, which is the same thing as that, right? Why can't it be something different?
Yeah. I like that. I think that it's just a really, we've got virtual worlds, we have NFTs, really emerging now, and all the different ways that we can create these really immersive brand experiences where brands can reach a consumer in a completely different way, or extend the brand experience, right, in a completely different way, and keep that customer much more connected to them, much more engaged, and even learn from the customers through what their creative expression is in this new world, if you will. So do you think that every brand and company will need a metaverse strategy?
Specifically, I think every brand needs to have at least somebody within their organization thinking about it. Whether they do it or not, that's really a strategy on their end. Now, my opinion is I would, but to what degree, right? So I believe if you take a snapshot in time, and if we're talking about like today, I think what you need to do is you need to have a strategy to understand it and start thinking about it. Do I think you need to open up like a store and start selling NFTs of like your first image of the lock that you created? No. Maybe. Do we need to team up with an artist and create interesting doors that you sell like art online? Maybe. I mean, that's a different way to touch an audience that, I mean, let's be real, like if you think that it's just a bunch of 12, 13-year-olds online, A, you're totally wrong. B, even if it was, those 12, 13-year-olds become 30-year-olds and buyers at some point. So long term, you may want to do that. And also, some of this is not just about product. Like, think about the impacts that this has for recruiting. If you build a brand there, I got a feeling a lot of these people that are working in this world are computer scientists and people that are interested in the, there's just a whole bunch of people that you may want to attract, that if you act like, the metaverse has cooties, it's probably not going to be good for you. I'm hoping that's the first time someone used cooties on your podcast.
It absolutely is.
All right, good. I'm first for something. No, but then the other thing I think about is, and I love exploring this, and this is the part that interests me, is you got to believe that there's a way for a brand to be built that's within the metaverse that is in an area, if you think about what part of it's built upon is trust, right? So our industry built on trust as well, keeping people safe. And if I'm building a brand in the metaverse that is around protecting assets, people, things, even if it's just not real, or maybe it is real, I don't know, but you can go on and you can think that, okay, if I start to build that brand big enough, can I not convert that into the marketplace and, I don't know, sell a bike lock? It doesn't like, I don't have to think very far to see how that could be. Again, I used the Mr. Beast thing. Like, yeah. Who would ever think about buying a hamburger from some YouTuber?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of the drive-through.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, I think everyone needs to have it. Yes.
Well, in keeping with that too, and that whole concept of being built on trust, I always like to look at new technology through the lens of, what's the impact on humanity? And we've had a lot of experiments that have gone, good and not so good in technology being introduced. Social media is a great example of that. We've had really great things that have happened via social media and some really terrible things that have happened. So when I think about the metaverse, I like to also think about, what are the ethical policies that need to be created? What are those ethical policies and experiences that, really transcend today's current communication framework or today's equity barriers? And I think it really goes back to, some of it goes back to your comment earlier about being your true authentic self, and how an environment like this, could potentially, if the right parameters are in place, could potentially allow for that and create, fewer equity barriers and fewer ethical issues, or more.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I don't profess to be like the expert in ethics. And there's actually a good friend of mine works in the ethics lab at Georgetown University. And like, that's a fantastic place. So I think a couple things. Number one, I think that the thought needs to be there of like what bad could happen. You look at some of the companies in the social media space, and it's clear either they didn't think about how the technology can be misused, or they did and they didn't care. Like, I'd like to believe they just didn't think about it, and they complete ignorance at least to go fix it. But I would like to believe that we've learned, right? And recently through a Zoom meeting that we did around this, it was brought up, like, thinking about how the impacts of like Web3 can have on somebody, and just, it doesn't, like, we like to talk about all the good, but like, let's have a conversation about the bad, at least identify it and have that conversation. I think the other thing is like, shame on us if we build this entire thing that's based off of decentralization and the spreading of the value across everybody, but then there's the same 4 people just new people that control all the power and money inside of it, then shame on us, right? So, I think there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. I think we need to build with an intent to do good and be aware of the bad. And we should have projects and things to help bring people to be, brought in the inclusion side. What's interesting on that side is, and again, I haven't thought deep into this, but I'll just pick one, right? You talked about inclusion on that side. One aspect of this is that, almost everybody is at least like the unconscious bias side of things, when I found going into this, doesn't exist as much as it does in the real world, where, I've got a bunch of female employees, and I can tell you, like, when they show up at IC West, people treat them different than they do maybe the males that walk into the room. And that's an unfortunate thing, but that's because their physical being is walking into the space, and there's, preconceived notions of how people live within in the world. With this, when you go online, I've noticed, I really don't know if I'm talking to a, South African 17-year-old, if I'm talking to a 32-year-old Canadian transgender, like, I have no idea, right? And
Right.
that's cool. I think about that, and it's like, I don't come in with those biases, and I like that.
Yeah, and so I think that as designers and creators really look at the metaverse and all the potential there, and take some lessons from the tech industry in general and some of the mistakes that have been made. Just really focus on, maybe not even focusing on who's being included, but focus on, is there a balance of, are we no longer omitting, and how is that expected to, really change the future of the platform? And I really think that the metaverse stands, for humanity, a chance to really reflect on our social ethics, on diversity, on inclusion, and really maybe get a step that was missed in the move from Web 1 to Web 2. You really get Web 3 right. So, you look at
I hope so.
Yeah, when you look at all of those things plus disinformation architecture, I think that we have an opportunity to kind of press the reset button and get Web 3 right, So that excites me about this particular topic.
Me too. I would say on that, though, it's interesting to me. I think Moxie wrote an article about this. We're building a lot of Web3 on Web 2 technology. So it's interesting to see about how it bleeds into it, right? Is there a fundamental way for us to build differently on Web 2 to hit Web 3, or is it all brand new Web 3? But like, when you think about, I think it's OpenSea, when you're buying some NFTs, and there's like a combination between the wallets that go into the purchasing stuff, it's utilizing APIs and whatnot. But again, I'm not an expert in it, but I was, from reading the article, it's an interesting thought exercise to have to, what exactly are we building? How are we building it? And then, like you're saying, I love it, is when we build with it in mind, we have the opportunity to do it right. So being careful and thoughtful, I think, is a good step one.
I feel like we should retitle the name of this segment to Deep Thoughts with Lee and Lee.
That's I love it. Yeah, but no, I mean, this is what I love about, like, what you're doing, and there's a group of people, and these conversations have to happen, right? Because it's right now, it's deep thoughts because we're thinking about it.
Agreed. Any other closing thoughts on, things that are interesting to you that are at the, starting to come to fruition, or anything about how, humans can really continue to adapt to our technology-centric, more and more hyper-connected world?
I mean, high level of curiosity, dig in. I know you and I connect on Twitter. I'm surprised how many people don't from our industry. And it's like where you discover a lot of this stuff, frankly, because you're not going to read about it in the security magazines, right, and places, right? So, like, going out there. The other one that I would say is a lot from our industry is, and I don't know if you were specifically talking about our industry, but I'm sure this bleeds into other ones, is like, this is a great opportunity to get the younger generation and different people in your organization that are probably, not, and some are, but I found majority of people that aren't necessarily heard as often, because this is an area that is different, and it's an opportunity to engage deeper and different within your organization with, people that you may not on a regular basis. So instead of trying to figure it out by, sitting around the boardroom, this is a great opportunity to reach down into maybe some of the younger professionals, or like I said, some of the older professionals, but people that are into this, that you haven't historically thought about engaging in business practices, because I could promise you they probably know a lot about this.
Oh, they definitely know a lot about this. And it's also just a far more engaging platform, right?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. It's a platform in order to go learn, and it's you got to go out of your comfort zone and a lot of this to go figure it out and just frankly dig in. I mean, I've taken a couple courses from people just to learn and to get educated on the fundamentals of just to understand it. I don't imagine that I'm going to quit my job and start, selling NFTs, but I just want to understand it, because I doubt a movement this big. It may not look like this in the end, but it's going to have impacts. And I don't want to be somebody who's playing catch up when it comes to this.
Yeah, same for me. The one that I'm really trying to educate myself on and learn a lot more about is definitely NFTs. And of course, as a marketer, right, you want to know about any technology that's delivering a brand experience. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today about this. Like I said, it's a topic that I know you and I just both have, a lot of curiosity and very inquisitive about. So I'm really glad I got a chance to connect with you. Hopefully I'll get to see you at ISC West.
Yes, we'll be there. And actually, we're going to be doing a Web3 conversation on Thursday. So
perfect.
I'll take a look at that.
I will definitely come by.
Love
All right.
it. Thank you
so
for
much.
the opportunity.
Physical security, identity verification, the IoT. The hyper-connectivity of our lives will only grow more pervasive. As technology becomes more automated and experiences more augmented, it's up to us to preserve our humanity and use new tools and trends for good. The only question is, are we up for the challenge?